Sarah's eating a donut in our podcast.
We have one rule.
She can't even talk.
Money donuts, you don't eat the donuts while we record. One rule, Sarah. Oops, and don't hit the table. That was it. Welcome to 2025, everybody.
Yay!
Wow, you guys are excited.
Are we starting or can I keep eating?
You can keep eating, but we're definitely going to put this in the podcast. It's going to be a minute of Sarah eating a donut to kick off everything. I want this to be a resource that somebody who wants to become a pet owner, that they can maybe hear what goes into it and then budget for it or take actions on how to mitigate some of the costs. Before we start, since we're talking about pets today, I thought we'd play a little game as we do the podcast. Are you guys ready for it?
Yeah.
So we're going to try to work in the word rough and meow in the podcast as much as possible. And then people listening right now can count up how many meows or roughs you hear and then comment in whatever form you're watching or listening. And you get no prizes, but just bragging rights.
That's a little rough, Steve.
Can you give an example of how somebody might brag about it later?
Like, hey, I caught 15 meows and 10 roughs. I am the money donut king or queen.
Okay.
Put some respect on my name, right? Meow.
That was an example. Thank you, Steve.
You didn't say good example. Are you guys ready to start meow?
This is going to be rough.
Should I be like Cooper, who always just like...
Oh, yeah. You might notice that we are missing a couple of our Money Donuts hosts today, but we got replacements who are much better as guests. So let's just
cheaper.
much cheaper.
Actually, we were just hanging out in the parking ramp, and Steve was like, "Where's my Money Donuts podcast people?" And then he ran outside to the parking ramp where we were smoking, of course, smoking hot, that is. And he's like, "Will you be on our podcast?" And we're like, "Sure." Is there free donuts involved? And here we are.
And then Sarah was like, "I brought my own donut."
She did, but none for us.
BYOD.
The story of how this podcast came along was my black lab just turned 1 year old, and I was thinking back about the past year and all the money that we have put into loving for this guy. And I thought, hey, there's got to be some tips or tricks, or at least people should start talking about the money that goes behind owning a puppy or an animal in general. Let's go around. I want you guys to introduce who you are, how you're connected with the credit union, and talk a little bit about past pets or current pets or what have you. Tony, we'll start with you.
Youngest first. All right.
Oh.
We have, my name is Tony. I am the graphic designer here at Royal Credit Union. And this is my second Money Donuts podcast. I am running to be like a permanent fixture of this someday.
You're like you have a campaign going.
Mm-hmm.
Nice.
Right. Big pet owner. I've always had pets ever since I was a kid, ranging from things like salamanders to dogs and birds, things like that. Right now I have 3 dogs, and they are my world. Fun fact about myself, though. Up until recently, I was also licensed through the Wisconsin DNR for wildlife rehab. So I have a lot of experience working with various wildlife and the care for them. And the reason that my license is no longer active is I decided to let it expire. Sorry, I was losing my words. This is rough. and just focus more on myself right meow. So
we can't laugh every time we do a meow.
I'm winning.
I'm Sarah. I am the current social media marketing intern at Royal, and I also have grown up with pets a lot, mainly dogs. I grew up with a German short-haired pointer. Her name was Bella. She passed away. It'll be 2 years ago now. She was just the best. Like, I loved her so much. I have a tattoo of her on my arm. And I've also had a lot of other pets. I've had a couple hamsters. I adopted my brother's bearded dragon for a little bit because during COVID he decided to get a bearded dragon, and then decided to stop taking care of it. So then it became my bearded dragon. And then we ended up giving him to our science teacher. Now I actually have my own pet. So I have a 2-year-old black and tan coonhound named Dan or Danny or Daniel when he's being bad. And he is also the light of my life. Best decision I've ever made in my life.
Can you talk a little bit about beard care for your bearded dragon?
He honestly didn't like me very much. I did try my best. I'm definitely the type of person with animals where it's like I try too hard and then the animal is like, back off, please.
Thanks, lady.
Yeah.
Not right, meow.
Yeah. But you don't really have to care for their beards all that too much. Mainly like shedding and stuff is the big thing for them.
Got it.
Was that a serious question, or were you trying to be funny?
I was being funny. I wasn't trying, Steve.
All right, Ben.
I'm Ben. Hello. I am the multimedia marketing intern at Royal. I work with Steve on videos. It's pretty fun. And my pet history. Growing up, we didn't have a ton of pets. Like by the time I was in high school, my parents finally got dogs and stuff, and that was pretty cool, but didn't really grow up around animals, although about 2 years ago, I owned a 100-pound black lab pit bull mix that was absolutely awesome for a little bit. His name was Rubel. Yeah. And yeah, best studio dog ever.
Was he awesome for a little bit, or did you own him for a little bit?
He was awesome the whole time I owned him. I only owned him for a little while, though. Long story short, I moved and he couldn't move with me, and he was a big dog, and he needed a country house, not a little city apartment. So yeah.
When you first began getting your animal, what kind of things were you guys budgeting for? Did anybody think about money before even getting an animal?
Steve, before we continue, I just want to let you know that you have an eyebrow hair above your right eye that's about 4 times longer than all the other eyebrow hairs in your eyebrow.
Going back to budgeting, I thought a lot about money when I was first getting Dan, because he's a rescue. So I adopted him back in May of 2024. At the time, I was living in a house with a bunch of other girls because I'm a college student. And so I was in a 5 house. It was really small. I was pretty much had a Harry Potter room, really tiny room in this house. And I started volunteering at the animal shelter, walking dogs and socializing the cats because after my dog had passed away, I was really missing that animal connection. The first time I walked Dan, just his goofy personality, I was like, I need you in my life. And right from there, I was like, it was such a split-second decision. I was like, I'm going to move out of my house and get a different apartment so I can adopt Dan. Obviously, going from splitting all my bills 5 ways to covering it all myself was a huge monetary plan. Finding a place was a big thing, and finding something that was within the budget of what I could afford was huge.
So did you actually write down all right, this is what I'm paying for rent. This is probably how much I'm going to need to pay for rent. This is how much adoption costs are going to be.
I don't necessarily know if I physically wrote it down, but I was kind of looking at my incomes from saving, obviously my paycheck from my internship at Royal, kind of seeing what my general income is month to month, and then take 30% of your income or something like that. And then another thing you have to think about is, your security deposits,
right,
being able to put down first month's rent. But then a lot of places will also have you put down a pet deposit, so a separate charge. So that was all kind of stuff I was planning out, seeing what I could afford, kind of building a savings stock so that I would know that, I would be able to financially afford.
Tony, Ben, how about you guys? Did you do budgeting, or did you go into it as a whim?
I should have budgeted. I flew by the seat of my pants for a while, and it was a little stressful, but...
Pet ownership is often a decision that you make on the spot and from the heart. It's not always a thought-out process. You see the animal and you think, I want that. I must have it. and you make it happen. It's only after that you realize that there are a lot more expenses to owning a pet than just the ones you could rattle off the top of your head.
Right. And that's like the quick reaction is you start doing like, all right, adoption fee. Oh yeah, we can handle food. What are some of those other expenses that you did not foresee?
That's a great question. I think for all three of my dogs, I have been fortunate enough to be forced to go to the vet several times a month ever since I became a dog owner. All three of my dogs have some special needs. We have my first dog, Willie. He's named Willy Wonka. And we came up with that name, this is a side note, because we were listening to Pure Imagination on the radio while we were trying to think of a name for him, and that was such a great song. But Willie is incredibly smart. He's the perfect little guy. He has some allergies. We're actually right now doing some testing with him, and that was quite expensive to do some blood tests with him. These allergies didn't show up until just recently, and he's about to be 7 years old. So we give him a series of shots at home now for therapy, hoping that within a year his allergies won't be as bad in the fall, because each fall he has started to break out more and more as he gets older. And this last fall was really, really rough on him. So, and then there's Molly. So Molly is Molly Weasley from Harry Potter, the most underrated character, if you ask me. Molly, we knew there was something wrong with Molly within the first few months of owning her, and that she would break out in hives and she would have really bad gas. And we thought, well, is this just dogs, pass gas? But this was like next level. So we got some more blood work done. That's several $100s. And from there, it was really learning about her diet. And we got a food allergy test back for her. And there were about 27 allergens. And beef and peanuts are all on it. And that makes it really hard to find food. And rice was on there too. And that's all in everything. Other big financial problem with that is you have to try to find foods that will meet their dietary needs. And really, you start to get into those really expensive brands, that specialize in things like that. So a bag of dog food, we found one that is about $65 a bag. And that's a lot of money for a bag of food. And I'm fortunate where I have a steady job and, I'm financially set. I think that I can handle that. But you think about anybody who's younger, going maybe into pet ownership for the first time, and if they were to be in that situation, that could be pretty sticky.
How much is in the bag? Like, what's the weight?
We get a big bag. I don't know the weight, but it's one that I have to throw over my shoulder.
Okay. So like 60 pounds maybe?
Roughly. Yes.
Oh.
I'm winning this contest.
You are.
So when you do have those unexpected expenses, how are you guys adjusting to budgets, and where are you cutting, or how are you making that work?
I just stop eating. Sometimes it is kind of like that. You kind of just cut something out of your life because, you've made that commitment to have a pet. It's similar to kids. I always joke, I'm a dog mom. I'm a single dog mom. But it is really like having kids. It's like you have a kid. You can't just not feed your kid, So you kind of almost have to take something out of your fun. So maybe instead of, eating out all the time, you try and buy produce, which is often a lot cheaper. So then you can try and cook meals that are a little simpler while you beef up your savings again, or while you cover those last minute costs, maybe like cancel a subscription.
Yeah, so you have another living thing that you have to take care of, and sometimes your wants and needs, you have to kind of put the wants aside to make it work.
Right. And those are, they're my kids. They're my first priority, and I will do whatever I can to make sure that they're taken care of. How we save for them and their expenses is we have a separate checking account that money from each paycheck goes into, so that when we have a big expense, we can get that taken care of.
So it's an actual checking account, not just a savings account.
It is a checking account, yes. So we could have a debit card for them, but we don't. We just never got one, I guess. When we need to, we use our primary checking and then just transfer the funds from the pet checking account and put it in there. You always see my out of office. I'm always at the vet. There's always something going on, whether it's ear infections or what else. I mean, Molly is just, we've had 2 cancer surgeries on her in the last 2 years, big tumors. And it was unexpected. We would take her in and I'd say, check out this lump. What do you think it is? And they would say, oh, that's a wart. That was the last one. Or that is a fatty tissue pocket. And I would monitor it constantly because I'm paranoid about stuff like that. It would change and I'd bring it back and I'd say, just take it off. And so they would, and they said, do you want to send it in for testing? Well, that's more money, but yes, I do, because I want to know the health of my dog. And they came back both times, cancer, So there are a couple other spots that keep showing up on her, and so I'm monitoring those as well. So there will be future surgeries. So it's a constant game of catch up financially with, the pet accounts too.
Are you trying to think proactively now and put even more money aside?
Oh, yes. We have adjusted that type of contribution to the account every month. So, yeah, it's not fun to think about, but you got to make it a priority.
Ben, has there been expenses that you didn't foresee when owning Rubal?
I was really lucky in that my first dog that I've owned myself, my mid-20s dog, was pretty healthy, didn't have a lot of issues, so he was pretty low maintenance, nothing crazy. He really liked rawhide bones, so
Okay.
I tried to get those for him when I could. I guess one unexpected expense was I'm not a big gamer, but I have an Xbox for watching movies and stuff, and he had a penchant for chewing up Xbox controllers. Like, other than that, he was super well behaved, but I'd just walk home and there'd be like a half-eaten Xbox controller on the ground. I was like, how the heck did you even get to that?
Maybe he was just a gamer.
Yeah.
Has there been other expensive or precious things that your animals have destroyed? Like, for example, the kitties keep eating, like, they love Crocs, the footwear, so they eat all the kids' Crocs. And then the dog, I mean, this is not that surprising, but stuffed animals or squishmallows are a big thing in my house with the 4 kids. And so Odin loves to eat or chew up squishmallows, which secretly I'm like, he's doing some good work, and I really appreciate his effort there. But
A couple weeks ago, I put on my glasses, getting ready for work, and both lenses were completely scratched up, and the part behind the ears are all chewed up, and I had to use those glasses for about 2 weeks while I waited for my new glasses to come in. Even with health insurance, that vision, it was about $450. Unexpected expense that month just for new glasses. So.
Who is the culprit there?
That was Bruce.
Bruce, the new
Bruce
puppy
is Bruce is he's a purebred pug puppy that we rescued from a rescue out of Minnesota. So he was apparently part of an oopsie litter and had been adopted out and then came back because he was
Eating
depressed.
too many glasses.
Yeah, probably. He needed a house with other dogs. So we're like,
Okay.
let's give him a chance. And Bruce is short for Bruce Wayne, Batman.
He's Batman. I'm Batman.
I'm Batman.
That's what he says. Sarah,
Dan is short for Dan. So, no, I've lost too many things to him, especially when I first got him. Like, he was just, and I didn't have like toys or bones or anything for him, so he was just taking it all out on me. He's gotten to quite a few shoes, pair of heels. I was lucky that the pair of heels were Target, so they're only like $20. So I was able to replace those pretty easy. He got to some Birkenstock sandals, which was not as cheap, but I was able to find a cobbler that specializes in dogs who chew up Birkenstocks, and so I was able to ship them to him, and he did a repair. It's not like perfect.
was that
but
like a Google search? You're like,
Yeah, I was like, how can I repair my Birkenstocks? And it was like, did your dog chew up your Birkenstocks? And it's like, it was like $45. And I'm like, I'd rather just send in my one sandal that was chewed up. Because he chewed like the entire strap off.
That
you
must be
know?
a thing that dogs love Birkenstocks.
Yeah.
Birkenstocks kind of smell a little bit, you
They're
know.
like rawhides.
Well,
Yeah.
and then I mean just from use, you know, people's feet and stuff. So imagine, first of all, who's like sitting in class like, I think I want to be a cobbler. You know, you never hear of that.
It's like a hobby.
Right. And imagine what like the cobbler's workshop must smell like. That would be rough.
That would be rough.
Lots of charging cords. I've gone through too many charging cords. At the beginning, he liked to chew on cords that were plugged directly into the wall.
They're spicy.
Yeah, exactly. So I would come home and in his kennel, there'd just be like a cord that was plugged in behind his kennel. And it was just all wires. And I'm like, how did you not die? You know, I've lost one of many bras to him. Bras are expensive. And they were all my expensive ones, you know. So I think I have a really good mentality about it compared to, some people that I've talked to about it, especially, looking at how my parents deal with whenever, I'd go home with Dan and, he would do something naughty or something. I, have the mentality of like, it sucks that he just destroyed this thing, but at the same time, a lot of the times you can salvage it in a way. And, things happen in life. Not everything's going to be perfect. Dan has scratched up the outside of my car before, like sticking his paws out the window.
Pets do make things a lot messier.
I think it's the same with kids, though. How many things have, Steve, you have kids, how many things have they ruined?
People, animals, anytime you're including things together, it does get a little bit messier. And you, like you said, you have to be one of those people who are going to embrace that. So you kind of have to know that going into getting an animal, though, right?
There's always a lot of surprises. I think it was just this spring. We had some of that concrete edging put in. They literally like pour the concrete edging in your yard, and then it needs to harden and cure. Well, Molly got outside and ruined some of it. So I had a choice to make. Do I stomp away and cry about it? Yes, I do. Do I just deal with it? Probably. Otherwise, the only other solution would be to replace it for another huge, amount of money. Yeah. And that is another expense. Puppy training classes that we did. And yeah, you don't think about it right away. All these things kind of fall into place after you bring that puppy or kitty or whatever it is into your home.
When you're saying puppy training classes, we also did that. And I wanted to go around and like just list off things that you did not expect to spend money on for your animals that you do spend a ton of. For us, toys was a huge thing. Is like indestructible toys,
which are never indestructible. Yeah.
No, we got one of those box deals for 3 months at the indestructible ones, and within a minute he had ruined everything. And we're like, what is happening here?
Well, even weirdly enough for Dan, I usually will get him the Super Chewer, which is meant to be like indestructible. He prefers to destroy things, so sometimes I have to get him the less indestructible box so that he's able to destroy things, so he doesn't go and actually destroy things that matter to me. So, which is like something you wouldn't think about. That's an expense that I also pay for. I have BarkBox subscriptions, which is also really convenient because then I don't have to think about treats. That's another expense that you wouldn't immediately think about because you're like, oh, let's give him a treat. If you don't have treats, you can't give him a treat,
And like you said, you need to, it helps with training and it saves money on the long run.
Yeah.
Okay.
I also found recently because Ben mentioned like rawhides. Dan, I found there's a pet store in Eau Claire, which I really like them, but driving to Eau Claire all the time just isn't doable for me sometimes. And because they have a lot of different like rawhides. Dan really likes cow ears with the hair on them, which are really hard to find.
Who doesn't?
Right.
I know. They're actually really good for dogs,
I could take one
too.
right meow. We went through a lot of leashes. He breaks a lot of leashes. We went through harnesses. And then for the kitties, I knew kitty litter was going to be a thing, but having 2 cats, 2 different locations, it's a lot of kitty litter. It's a lot of food. I'm just trying to think of other expenses that we've had.
Babysitters.
Babysitter. So
Yeah.
that is a great one.
And
yeah.
like babysitters, kenneling, that was something I never really expected needing. And it's really important to me as a student because during the day I'm out in classes and I'm the type of person that I don't want him kenneled for 8 hours a day. I want him to go out, midday and go potty and stretch his legs and stuff. So figuring out like, do I take him to daycare? How much is that going to cost? Do I try and get friends to take him out? But like sometimes friends aren't as consistent as you'd want them to be.
You have terrible friends.
You know what
Yeah.
we should really be looking at though is like, how do pets save you money? My example is I love the idea of going out with friends, but then when the night comes, it's like, oh no, I don't want to do that. And I say, oh, I can't. I have to take care of my dogs. They're saving me money, so I'm not buying, food and drinks and all of that stuff. So,
But you really had to stay home last Friday night. That's why you didn't want to come out to dinner with us.
I was at dinner, Steve. You were not. You were busy growing that eyebrow.
I had to stay home. I had to stay home with the puppy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Right.
I'm sorry.
Mm-hmm.
I got free press with Ruble once.
All right, how did that work?
Just to preface this, Ruble is a dog that loved to pull. Like he was a tank. He would pull you left and right and either which way. One day I was taking him for a walk, or rather he was taking me for a walk and pulling me across this like park field in Madison where I lived at the time. And
I can almost hear Ben. Ruble, no.
yeah.
Ruble.
From a ways away, there was a photographer who took my picture of me getting pulled across the snow by Ruble. Anyways, I walked a couple blocks and then he caught up with me and had me sign like a talent release so that he could use the picture. But yeah, free press via my dog. Pretty cool.
That's awesome.
I read that article, and that's why Ben's actually here on the podcast.
Yeah,
today.
and you got a record deal out of that one too.
Yeah.
It was called Rough Winters.
I was trying so hard to think of some pun to use, and I just couldn't.
Rough.
You can't just randomly
Meow.
rough.
Let's pause. that. Oh, see?
There we go. That's bonus points. We can work that one in. So yeah, saving money is important. So what tips and tricks do you guys have you found in pet ownership that?
I have a couple.
Oh, let's go.
Yeah. Depending on where we are shopping that day, my dogs love beef bones that are filled with substances of some kind. And of course, I always have to look at those ingredients, but there are about 2 varieties that I can get. And there's one store, and I'm going to try not to name drop stores. There's one store that always has them for $7.99, and they're the big ones. But when we go out, there's another store that we often take them into to shop. They have those bones, but they're $12.99, which is quite an increase. So they also price match. So I have the image of that on their website of the cheaper location saved on my phone. So I just pull that up and they price match it every single time. So I'm saving quite a chunk of money if I shop there.
Yeah, price matching. That's a good one.
Something that I do try to budget on and helps like financially and is, especially because Dan doesn't have any dietary restrictions, is sometimes I can cut his food with a different line of kibble that's a little cheaper. I'll get another bag of the cheaper kind and then kind of cut them together. So he's still getting, a consistent amount of food. It's consistent between the brands, but I'm able to kind of save a little bit in between the bags because something that I didn't realize with pet ownership, I grew up with a dog, but she was more my dad's dog. So it's like, oh, she always had food.
Teaching you responsibility.
Exactly. And so kind of finding ways to not necessarily cut corners, but substitute things helps a lot.
I have to say that both of you guys, when I said, hey, come to the podcast, you're like, can I bring my dog? It's like,
why wouldn't we? There are kids. We didn't cover like monthly medicines that are often not thought about. For example, tick control and Heart Guard are the two primary ones. And because I'm awesome and I have a 20-pound dog, a 55-pound dog, and about a 100-pound dog, the heart medicine is different for all three of them. Well, and the tick medicine really is too, but like that can be tricky, because you're buying at that point, for me, it's 6 different medicines, and I have to keep track of them. And, that gets into a whole nother topic of scheduling, and trying to keep track of that. But
Yeah,
expensive. Yes, Sarah?
Sorry.
Just kidding.
Wow.
I've been a really bad dog mom. I ran out, so I give Dan some Parenthood Trio.
What is that?
Paracatrio. If your dog requires, that's a hair dye, isn't it? You dye their hair like different colors.
No, so
Parakeet Trio.
yeah,
And it's got 3 birds on the box.
yeah,
A trio of parakeets. This is all going to be cut from the podcast, so I don't care. I'm just talking now.
it's pretty much like what Tony was saying. It's flea,
Like-
tick,
it's
and
a 3-in-1.
worms all together. So Trio. The only thing with that is a lot like something that's hard with the medicine is you have to go to the vet. Well, I don't want to pay for a vet visit to get him, medicine, or even just like, because it's all based on their weight. So it's like, I take him to get weighed. That's going to cost a vet visit, like a short one, but still going to cost me money. So, and I've been kind of bad. I forgot to go and get some more. He ran out like last month.
It is good, though, for your vet to be aware of the medicines that you're giving your dog. It also helps you build that relationship with your vet so that, when something serious comes up and you call them, they're going to take you seriously about it because they know that you know what you're talking about. So there's something to be said about that, too.
Yeah. Ben, do you have any questions for them?
I don't think that one counted, Steve.
Yeah, if you were to, in the next day, get any kind of animal for an additional pet, what would it be?
Answer right now.
Right now. Probably, I want another dog, but I can't financially support another dog. So that would probably be it. I've always been fascinated by cats, but cats don't like me. Not because I'm a bad person.
Are you sure?
Cats can see into your soul.
It's because I want to love on cats like I love on dogs, and a lot of cats don't like that.
You're too needy. Please get away from me.
Exactly. Yeah. So I would probably get another dog, but also part of me wants to just have a herd of hounds, just get a bunch of them floppy ears, go, ooh, all, ooh, get a farm and they can all run around.
Let's wrap it up. Yeah, if anybody wants to recap any other expenses that they were surprised about.
Well, let's start off from the very start. Let's say you're going to adopt the animal from the shelter. You have that adoption fee, right? Oftentimes it's in the contract that within a certain amount of time from adopting that pet, you have to then have them spayed or neutered. So you have to plan an additional chunk of money for that. And that can range depending on where you go. There's also the initial vet visits, with the vaccines, the checkups, that kind of stuff, plus the supplies. If you're a first-time pet owner, then there's a lot of money that you have to kind of dump into food dishes and food and a kennel if you need it. There's a lot there. Leashes, collars.
Training.
Poop bags, for when you go on walks. You want to be that responsible pet owner, right? And then, like you said, the training, and you might have to get actual day care, which is about $50 a day sometimes, depending on where you go. Oftentimes, they will work with your dog at daycare and provide some sort of training there too. So do your research with that.
And to expect the unexpected. Whether it's vet visits or holes in your yard that you have to fill on a weekly basis, Odin, I hope you're listening to this, that you have to take care of. You don't really know what's going to happen or what could happen. So kind of plan you have to have emergency savings for your animal.
And depending on what happens, you could have to then install a fence. You could have an increase in your rent because they have a pet fee.
Damages to your house.
Yes,
even.
That's where I was going to go next. We got one of those amazing rug doctor machines because potty training Bruce has been a nightmare. Plus a spot cleaner, plus new glasses for $450. I mean, the list just goes on and on.
Some rentals and some places you have to have pet insurance too to have certain things. Licensing, you got to have the yearly licensing within the town that you live in.
But those are pretty affordable.
Yeah, registering your animal, dog park.
Rabies.
But some ways to save on the money, though. We talked about just not going out anymore, right? So that was kind of a joke, but kind of serious,
No,
too.
you have an animal and
Right.
you have like a new friend.
Yeah. But there are a lot of resources out there if you are going through, some financial troubles. Maybe you lost your job or, you're in between things. There are a lot of options out there for you to help you get food for your pet, care for your pet. Also, something that we didn't touch on was if your dog attacks another dog, then you're going to be responsible to pay for that injured dog's vet bills too. So there's a lot to think about and consider.
I think for saving money, kind of going back through the list that we just had of a lot of expenses, a lot of those things you can honestly save by just not going, I guess you could say, like name brand, like reusing things. Because, if you're just starting out and you don't have that money, a dog's not going to know if you just give them like a couch cushion. Like you just take off a couch cushion, cover it in blankets. Like Dan doesn't have a dog bed. He has blankets. I have this really big old beanbag that he loves laying on. I lay a blanket over it. It's like his dog bed. eBay, Facebook Marketplace are great places for finding like crates and kennels. My parents found a kennel for Dan for when I come home so that he can be locked up if I need to go out somewhere.
Gym memberships. Cut back on gym memberships because now you're walking the pups or the kitties. Get a kitty backpack. We do
That's
have.
terrible advice to anybody listening.
Well, I'm just saying, like, you do get a little bit more exercise, right? Health wise, like, I feel good about having an animal because I'm walking. I looked at my steps compared to 2023 compared to 2024, and they were increased.
That is excellent, Steve. I'm very proud of you.
Thank you. I wasn't searching for a compliment, but I appreciate it. All right. If there was a donut that you would pick to represent pet ownership, what would it be? Pause for a second. I know it's rough, but right now, deliver me a donut.
I don't know if this exists, but imagine the assorted chocolate version of donuts, because you never know what you're going to get from day to day. That would be the donut or box of donuts that would, I think, represent pet ownership.
So it'd be like a Boston cream.
Yes.
Or a...
Yes. Or you could do an apple fritter because that most closely resembles a pile of dog crap.
Yes! Take that, Cooper.
Maybe a chocolate donut because it might raise your blood pressure from time to time, but the flavor is rich.
There you go.
Dogs can't have chocolate though.
True.
But you're not...
It's
the dog's
symbolic.
not.
It's a metaphor.
Yeah, Sarah.
Should the dogs be eating donuts at all? No. My advice a year ago to myself was life is short, get the dog, which is something. But you also should think things through and kind of realize the expenses that are going to go with pet ownership. If you like Money Donuts, feel free to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Tell your very best friend about the podcast and make sure that they tell their very best friend. Sarah created a Money Donuts Instagram page last year, so she helped really make it what it is, and so you should go to Instagram and follow Money Donuts. Leave us some comments. I hope you learned that we can work rough and meow into a lot of different things poorly. All right, thank you all for joining, and we'll catch you guys next time. Rough.